Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. I hope you guys are doing well. We're going to talk about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And so this is a foundational piece in understanding yoga. And really what we need to touch on first is the three gunas, just to give you a little bit of a background. So what are the three gunas of nature? Well, they are what basically make up Maya, or the illusion of this reality. And when we look at guna, it basically translates as a quality, an attribute, a tendency, so to speak. So when we look at them, there's three, and they are tamas, rajas, and sattva. Tamas is the state of darkness, inertia, inactivity, and materiality. Tamas manifests from ignorance and deludes all beings from their spiritual pursuits. Other tamastic qualities are laziness, disgust, attachment, depression, helplessness, doubt, guilt, shame, boredom, addiction, hurt, sadness, apathy, confusion, grief, dependency, and ignorance. Now, rajas is a state of energy, action, change, and movement. The nature of rajas is that of attraction, longing, attachment, and rajas strongly binds us to the fruits of our work. Other rajasic qualities are anger, euphoria, anxiety, fear, irritation, worry, restlessness, stress, courage, rumination, determination, and chaos. Sattva is a state of harmony, balance, joy, and intelligence. Sattva is the guna that yogis achieve towards as it reduces rajas and tamas and thus makes liberation possible. Other sattvic qualities are delight, happiness, peace, wellness, freedom, love, compassion, equanimity, empathy, friendliness, focus, self-control, satisfaction, trust, fulfillment, calmness, bliss, cheerfulness, gratitude, fearlessness, and selfishness. So jumping over here to be yogi, you see that Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are broken up into the following four chapters. Samadhipada, which defines yoga, but it's meant to guide those who are already close to samadhi, or self-realization. Sadhanapada, which describes the 8 steps to follow for spiritual evolution. This chapter is targeted towards the common person. It's possibly the most important of all the chapters in a sense, as most yogis use the Eightfold Path as a reference for yogic life. This includes ethical moral behavior, asana, which is poses or positions, pranayama, which is basically breath control and working with the breath, mastery of the senses, concentration, meditation, self-realization, accomplished in this step-by-step order. So Vibhuta-pada describes and also warns against the temptations of the 8 cities, and those are the supernatural powers that a yogi can achieve in the higher levels of spiritual development. Kaivalya-pada describes how to live in the world in a detached manner, beyond the influences of the 3 gunas, which we were just talking about, or qualities of energy. Together, these 4 chapters focus on a person's overall evolution in action, thought, and speech. Patanjali has provided the ultimate instruction manual for yoga and spiritual development, making Patanjali's Yoga Sutras one of the most referred to sources of yogic wisdom. So, it's just a deep, amazingly deep scope of thought and of a way to achieve self-realization. And self-realization is about realizing the God that lies within us. So that source is in every being, every entity on this planet. So we're never apart from God. We are never truly separated from God if we but recognize that God exists inside each and every one of us. Now, this is in direct contradiction to many other to the Abrahamic traditions in the fundamentalist sense, recognizing, of course, that there were many forms of Christianity, for instance, in the early ongrowing of the church, and one of which was Gnosticism and Gnostic philosophy, which basically said the same thing. Source lies within us and not without. But there are forces that have codified a different a different line of thinking and philosophy, whereas it has caused us to have this sense of separateness from each other, from the world, and from God. And that is part of the dysfunction of this planet when we look at it. It's so clearly a major, major part, perhaps one of the highest parts of dysfunction we see in this world and in this society. If we saw God within every living thing, would we not treat it differently? Treat it with higher level respect? Treat it with reverence, compassion, and love? This is what's missing from our society. And so in yoga, which means yoke or union with the divine, it's all about going within. And it takes patience and it takes practice. It's not going to happen overnight for the vast majority of people. It's a slow, gradual unfolding. And the Yoga Sutras are meant to be pondered, meditated upon. So this is not something that we would just simply read right through as if it was a fictional story. And then, that's it. It's over. And not the case at all. Here, this is much more like the Tao Te Ching, where we read a sutra and we let it sink in and we meditate on it and we ponder it. You may choose to go all the way through, as there are 200 of them from front to end, and then come back and let it sink in one at a time. Perhaps just, taking in one sutra a day. There are many, Bibles that are broken up this way as well, where you just take one scripture a day. So when we start to look at this, some of these statements might appear to be very broad, but we are to let them sink in and go deeper. So yoga is to still the patterning of consciousness. So you might look at that and just say, okay, still my patterning of consciousness, still my mind. Okay. And yeah, it is that simple. But to realize and recognize what that's saying at a deep level, and then to recognize how your own mind works, is a totally different thing. Our minds are constantly going. They hardly ever stop in most people. They're constantly chattering. Have you noticed that there's either words going in your mind, like an inner dialogue going on, or a song perhaps repeating time and time again? Maybe you're driving to work and you're late for work and you're just going through your head envisioning what the boss is going to say. Or conversely, you're stuck in traffic going home and you're starving and you're just thinking about dinner. Yet, undeniably, our minds are going without cessation on a regular basis. So, one of the keys is to recognize that, and to recognize the patterns of our mind, the rambling, and the fact that 80% of it is identical every single day. So yoga is to still the patterning of consciousness. One of the biggest realizations to have is, well, first off, that you are not the body, that you are in the body, that you have a body, but you are not the body. You are something else. Then the realization, excuse me, guys, that you have a mind, and that mind's always working. Yet, you know what? You are not even the mind. You are something else. And to cut to the chase, the realization is that you are the observer. You are that which is observing the mind and its incessant rambling, and the body, and all that the body goes through and does and experiences every single day. Yet you are the observer. You are neither the body or the mind. And that's easy to say, but to experience that leads to a realization. And that is self-realization. That is recognizing that. And then recognizing the unity of all life. And the fact that all that we apparently see is really, it's Maya, it's illusion. It's a construct of the mind. We have heard scientists say that in reality, time, we cannot have time and space apart from each other. If we look at what Einstein taught us, there is space-time. It's a continuum together. Yet, that's only in this reality. When we move up and out of it, then we discover, just as consciousness itself is eternal, it's hard to fathom, but in one sense of reality, everything is happening concurrently. And that sounds like a conundrum. Like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? So when we look at it again, yoga is to still the patterning of consciousness. The next one is, then pure awareness can abide in its very nature. So until we still the patterning of consciousness, until we quiet the mind, we cannot achieve pure awareness. Most people, unfortunately, are not aware that what they think is themselves is nothing but an ego. It's a construct. It's not the true self. It's the little self. It's not the true self. And if we go into the Bible, I am is a huge realization. I am. And it's a huge statement. There's so much power in those two worlds. In just two words. I am. Recognizing the self and recognizing the being. That we are beings. Yet we're not the body, and we're not what appears to be ourselves. We're something different. We are consciousness itself. Pure consciousness. And that is what this whole world is created for. It's created for consciousness to explore its creation. It's a beautiful thing that we realize when we go in deep. So, there need not be any fear of any sort of hells, any damnation, any vindictive God, any one dogmatic way of doing things. When we recognize that this apparent world of illusion and duality is in reality, it's pure Maya. It's a construct of the mind. We are eternal beings. We are all a part of Source. So that is the Atman. The Atman is the individuated spark of God that lies within every single one of us. And then there's Brahman, which is the totality, the whole. And this is, again, a reality in which we see the microcosm and the macrocosm reflecting each other. As above, so below. As within, so without. We live in a fractal multiverse. So until we can still the mind, we cannot achieve pure awareness. And very few do that. If we're looking at the actual percentage of the population that has achieved that, you're not going to achieve that through the left brain alone, through the logical mind. You can't achieve that through any words. You can't achieve it through any deeds. It can only be done when we gain the discipline through constant practice of stilling the mind and allowing the pure awareness to abide. As we see the next one, otherwise, awareness takes itself to be the patterns of consciousness. So we start, we think that we are the pattern of consciousness. And again, that takes us back to the ego, the little self. So we believe a lie that we are the body, that we are the mind in the body, when in fact we're the observer. We're outside of this reality. The easiest analogy is basically a video game. Are you the character in the game? Well, in a small sense you are, because that's your representation, that's your avatar. You need that avatar to go into that game, but you control everything. You are observing everything that happens in that game. And yet, when the game's over, you still are. And that's exactly the reality that we find ourselves in here. So my friends, we will go deeper into these Yoga Sutras in the future. I want to thank you guys so much for all your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. As always, may you be blessed with abundant peace, love, health, prosperity, and happiness. God bless, and namaste.